that is all known to you, and that, so.
Right. So wonderful. We are at 6, I guess, just dot 6, and we'll obviously allow people in. I've started the recording as well.
Yeah, we have.
Hey, Chandan, just help me out. I can't see myself.
Wonderful. You look good, Shrikant.
I can see you. I can see Jay. I could see Meeta, but I can't see myself. What is the setting?
Good. So you focus on those who can see.
Yeah. You see yourself enough, Shrikant.
Now I can't hear you also.
Okay.
What happened?
We can hear you, Shrikant. We can hear you.
Stopped, I guess.
I must have messed up something.
You can log off and sign in. That's usually the best solution.
Are you based at Pune?
Yes, Meeta, I'm based in Pune. Yeah.
Yes. So I think we'll just keep up with the tradition. Jay was also very, very, I remember during his days as well, he was very specific about the timing, I guess, which is a very important aspect for all of us. We just try to be on time. So we definitely dive into a different area today, because this is more about our own family, about the IMCI family, and very happy that Jay and he just did mention 20 years of his work into this book, and thanks to COVID here, that he is able to put it down. So I'm sure some of us already have the copy. This is how it looks like for people who are there or who will be looking at the recording. And the book certainly looks very, very good, Jay. So it speaks about succeeding in business, and this is more around nurturing values in family business. So I'm sure most of us or all of us will have some of our own insight and flavors in family business, whether we are directly related or indirectly related. So I'm sure it's a topic which all of us will understand, but I think only few like Jay will be able to delve much deeper into it, thanks to his work that he has done over the years with family business. And we also have Meeta as well. So from that side, this is extremely special. I was just thinking how to put this context, because when we talk about family business, it is such a fascinating aspect. We see, and in fact, also the book mentions that there are just about over, I guess, 250 firms which has stood the test of time, 200 years plus history. So more. So this is obviously and more. So, and this is a phenomenon which is not recent. So it has been there since so long. In India, we see organizations which says over 100 years, 200 years of history. I was yesterday in Chennai with Murugappa Group, another group which is family owned. They clearly displayed over 200 years of legacy. So, I mean, that's something which is very, very intrinsic and deep entrenched in our market, in our country, and globally as well. I mean, it's not limited to India. I think globally, some of the big organizations or corporations, be it Walmart, to be it even the Volkswagen of the world. So the diverse nature is such that, in fact, everything from A to Z of Amazon, a family business will be involved at a certain level. So it's very, very diverse. At the same time, over the years, a lot has changed in terms of how it is going up. In fact, some of the organization might find it difficult to grow beyond a point of time, or some of them may be doing very, very well for last 10 years, and this 5 to 10 years they are struggling, and they are just struggling to grow, and as a result they are going down in any case. Plus, there are businesses which are able to pick the new trends, and they are able to completely redefine themselves. Some of them with outside help, and within our consulting fraternity, some of you have been instrumental as well in this. So there's a huge divergence in terms of this family business. It's not a very simple exercise to just bracket it in one place or the other. there are lots of goods and lots of bad what is happening if you just see it from outside. But I think when we see the coverage in this book, this very much takes you through a flow of information. And this is where Jay will be looking forward to hearing from you. The format of how we will keep it is Jay will speak about, just give us a view of his thoughts and view on the book initially. And then we'll follow it up with a question and answer. So I have a list of questions which I have noted. And eventually also all of you, I would request if you can also put your question in the chat box. That'll help me to take it up. And then maybe, I'm sure with the audience permitting, you can ask the question yourself. And this is how we will interact. So that will be the nature of it. Now, very happy also to introduce Jay. I mean, he needs no introduction for sure. And we were just talking that he, from Pune, when we started the web mode of discussion of knowledge sharing, he was the first one to speak on the business resilience and how to look at post-COVID or maybe during COVID and ahead era. So he obviously is a very strong professional, and obviously in Pune, we are very happy to always claim him as a management professional who has worked extensively in India and overseas with family-run businesses, with other organizations as well as an advisor or coach. And he has been working right at the strategy aspect of it. Of course, a certified management consultant, has also worked for the UN as well on various assignments. There's one thing which is also interesting. So obviously, Jay really speaks in various forums. He also speaks to B School. So he's quite updated as to what is happening in the yesteryears versus in today's era. He also, he did a corporate leadership expedition, Reach for the Sky. It was back 2007, but that's very interesting. Maybe Jay can give us a 10-second view of that. That said, I think, Jay, we're very happy to open it up. Thank you very much for this, and please take it forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chandan. I was just trying to see how many have actually signed in, because
I can see 9.
Shekhar, nice to see Shekhar there. Yeah, and
hi, Shekhar.
yeah,
Hi, Chandan. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Shekhar.
So it's become quite a Pune chapter thing. So Meeta, you're the guest from out of town for us. And also Baby Jacob, and that's a new name for me because we haven't seen his name too many times in the other sessions. So Baby, if you could tell us where you are based, it will also perhaps help us, because at IMCI Pune chapter, we've always been trying to be to welcome people from other locations. So could you tell us, please, Baby, if you can hear us?
I think he's from Hyderabad.
I hope he's there. Right. So, Chandan, since the group is very, shall I call it, intimate, because we are a small group, let's try and keep conversations going. And I did have a brief presentations to anchor these conversations around, but if the numbers are not very large, then I don't have to go too deep into various stuff. Particularly as I know all of you are very seasoned professionals, and Meeta, amongst the last presentations in IMCI on family business was done by Meeta and Walter. So therefore, this is a subject which is very close. So I would really, what you said, Chandan, you could discuss it and draw on the learnings from all the people. And some of us who are consultants, Shekhar, I don't know whether you run a family business as well, because I don't know who are the others.
My daughter has joined me now, so I can say that it is a family business.
It is a family business. So, and for many consultants, it does happen that way. So what I thought I would focus on in this conversation, instead of talking about the book per se, I decided to actually focus on the converse, and I wanted to, I thought I'll talk about what I call the blind spots of ineffective families. And I thought I'll offer a baker's dozen, 13 points around which we could. And I'll run through these 13 the book focuses on what it takes to succeed. But I thought when we discuss this, I'll take the opposite position and then perhaps anchor the conversation. So that's my intention today. Obviously, many of these things that we discuss have both, they're all interconnected ideas. They're not as if they are disparate ideas. They are certainly very interconnected. And so therefore, my explorations will range around these aspects. Okay. So Chandan, you did speak about the fact that as consultants, we work with family businesses. So many of the issues that I'll talk about are things that we have encountered, because some of us are, in a sense, the external counselor to the business. And if some things have gone well, we have contributed. If some things have not gone well, it's nice for us to blame the client. But also, I guess, as consultants in settings like today's, we have a chance to turn the lens on ourselves and ask ourselves, did we do our professional role to the degree that it was required? So let's begin with that. First, my fascination. Meeta's, lovely question was, how long did it take you to write the book? And I said, 20 years. And Meeta, I'm sure as both of us are students of this field, it's more than 20 to be more precise, isn't it? Because what fascinates me, I worked for a group called Tata's. My corporate career was only with, and it's up in the air as to whether it's a professionally managed group or a family business. Because depending on how you slice and dice, there are many people who will tell you Tata is the Tata ki company. And there are others who will tell you, no, Tata's is the ultimate story of how a family business became a professionally run organization. To the extent that Tata ko Tata hi nahi chalata hai. Now it's Chandrasekhar who runs it, But we also know that there are trusts and other mechanisms and through which you can maintain control. So, but I've been fascinated by the story of families. And it's equally more, very, very interesting because this is a never-ending story. And therefore, some of you may recognize these two youngsters. They were very much in the news just about a month ago. And these two, for those of you who may not know, are two youngsters called Adit Palicha and a youngster called Kevelle Vora. Just about turned 19. Taken a sabbatical. I wouldn't say dropped out of Stanford, but taken a break from Stanford to start a completely new venture called Zepto. Okay, which is making news because there is a new field of grocery delivery which operates through dark. We have heard of cloud kitchens. Now these are called dark stores. They want to deliver stuff to you in 10 minutes. 19 according to, I think, Big Basket or Instamart. Swiggy has Instamart. These youngsters, you may look at them and saying, do they really know all the items in the grocery cart? But they promise to bring it home in 19 minutes or less actually. 10 minutes is what they claim. Care. So to me, the story of entrepreneurs is amazing. I just love discussing stories of entrepreneurs. It's been my personal fascination, which is why I decided to look at this in a little more closer light. And also because I think entrepreneurs in our country are not respected enough. We have a national culture where everything is dependent on the government, whether it's for concessions, which industries keeps lobbying for, or we need, naturally given our social environment, we need support from the government for various things. And if there is one thing that COVID has taught us is that we are all so dependent on the government. And of course, the other favorite pastime is we all blame the government for everything. But the entrepreneurial class has not really been recognized enough, because the principle of generating value, creating value, sustaining it is something which is, as a country, we have not appreciated enough. So when I see the story of these two youngsters now, what I didn't tell you was that these two youngsters didn't study in India. They studied in Dubai. Is there something in the air of Dubai? And I was trying to find out a little bit of the background of these two boys. Turned out that one of them is from a family business. His parents are in business. The other is not. And I had this personal connection because my sister-in-law taught these students. So she was fascinated. She shared their story. And I was really interested, saying, when it came to doing business, they came to India. Their first store, their first operation is in Mumbai, and now they're taking it to other cities. So there is something in the Indian entrepreneurial environment, if we could only work on and make it a little better, So my book is really in many ways is a tribute to these guys, to tribute to the world of businessmen, okay, to the people who generate value. And my concern is that if they generate value, why are they not able to sustain it? Hence the concern about blind spots. So clearly all of us understand what these guys attempt to do, what an entrepreneur does, converted into a family business, is that they are desperate to constantly, win. And they play, all businesses want to win. But for these guys, it's more than anything else. Because for them, if they don't do it, there's a lot at stake. They can't go running to the government and say, buy me out. Or like a public sector unit saying, give me more money. Because public sector units can always say, Santa Claus comes for them 12 times a year. The taxpayer will always foot the bill, not for private businessmen. Unfortunately, in India, in the past, private businessmen have also been bailed out. My book refers to that. But what makes it interesting for me is this line that I heard from one of my clients. He says, we are not going to go away. Chahe nuksan ho ya faida, hum to rahenge isme. So they're persistent, they're resilient, and to ensure that they sustain, they are going to be very, very creative. They'll find solutions where everybody says it can't be done. Because for them, it's not the money alone that keeps them in the game. And when you look around the world, even in India, the 2016 figures show that virtually 80% of India's workforce is actually employed by private businesses. Meeta is very familiar with the work of John Davis, and John actually refers to the work which was done in the University of Virginia, where he showed they did a very long study and they found that truly across the world, what you find is that private businesses actually deliver greater returns than so-called professionally managed organizations. And unfortunately, professionally managed organizations get all the, as I mentioned in the book, everybody, all the MBAs that Meeta trains and I train, everybody wants to join a professionally managed firm. But often they don't even realize that this so-called professionally managed firm is actually a family business. So what are those blind spots that come up? And in this context, and I said 70%, 80% are employed by, family businesses employ people. So new families are constantly emerging. And they are thrilling stories of success, Okay. And I thought I must feature the latest one. Look at this new family. 53% of the firm is owned by them. And this lady, 6.5 billion on day one. I mean, what a story, right? And for years, she worked for another family business. She worked for Uday Kotak. So the house of Kotak groomed her. But while working in Kotak, she never hid her dream, saying that one day I'm going to start my business when I turn 50. And what a story, So, and now let's hope this business sustains itself, so that the multi-generational businesses can emerge from people like the youngsters, Adit, or the Naikas of today. While new families are rising, what we also find that there are many of them are extremely troubled. Who doesn't know their story? Right? And the ultimate guy who's so troubled that he decided to run away. And I always say that he got some bad advice. He should have stayed in this country, gone to jail for a couple of days, come out and run his business again. And when I was preparing these slides, I was reminded of both of them because you're asking me about my work, Meeta. Well, these two also are recent authors, isn't it? Mr. Singhania's book came out a month ago, already a bestseller. And of course, son Siddharth has also written his book. So COVID has brought a lot of writers out, isn't it? But their stories are all very different. And talking of stories and transformations, here is a family that is totally transformed. And guess what? This family has also written its story. And those of you who read Harsh Mariwala, what a wonderful story for many of us who've been tracking the world of business. It is such a beautiful story of transformation and a beacon for many other businesses who want to sustain themselves, And very early in the game, he has clearly decided that he's going to change the game, because as the book says, his hand was forced. He wanted to do it, but his hand was also forced. So these are transformations. But why is it that others can't do it? So let's come to the blind spot. The first one. It's such a no-brainer, but families don't get it. That if you want to run a business, then you better run by business principles. I spent a chapter on the fact that the social contract, and I've called families and businesses Janus-faced. They're two sides of the same coin. And anybody who's advised or lived or working, and we have some, our friends here who are running, Shekhar, where does the business stop and where does the family begin? It'll be interesting to see, to be a fly on the wall when you're inducting your daughter into the business, But obviously, a smart man like you will also always remind them that this is business. And if you don't operate by the principles of business, there are going to be lots of trouble for the business. You cannot sustain value. And this is the challenge for a business. Because if you can't create it, you're going to be in trouble. The dream is to be this big, beautiful. I've used the analogy of a butterfly in my book. Because to me, I'd always talk about the business life cycle as being in 4 parts. And I'm not going to narrate the entire thing. But all I can tell you is that just like the butterfly's life, if you map a business to these 4 major stages of a butterfly's life, you can actually see whether the business can sustain itself or not. And the dream is to become this big, beautiful butterfly. But to do that, unless the family is willing to push itself and design the change, in nature, the butterfly will live its course. But in business, you can't just leave it to, to happen by accident. You have to design it. So the drive of the entrepreneur, whether it's the patriarch, usually the patriarch, we live in a patriarchal society worldwide, unless you design it. So at every stage, if you don't bring it in, so the business principles have to be applied. And unfortunately, most organizations don't do that very well. Now, I intend to run through these blind spots very quickly so that we can have greater conversation. But that was the first one. The second one is what I call poor role clarification. There are too many people sometimes in business, particularly some of the bigger family businesses, who are trying to steer the wheel, And guess what? There are too many people who are putting the foot on the brake. And therefore, the business either splutters or it goes off the rail. Too many SMEs have too many people who have got involved, and there are too many people trying to do everything. You can't all really operate. Even businesses where they have too many, joint managing director models don't seem to work. You need to have clear roles and structures. Roles have to be defined very clearly, otherwise you're going to be in difficulty. Because to me, a family business is a multi-round game. Like these games that youngsters play on these video games. You die, but you can be reincarnated. And if you do well, you can go to the next phase. And as a business, you need to constantly, and like I love these video games that youngsters play because they keep getting things, You win every time you meet an obstacle, you tackle it, you win something, You can buy more forces or you get some money, virtual money. So to me, like that, a business that does not grow has already begun to die. Any business, size is immaterial. And now I've worked for professional firms, and I can tell you, I worked for firms that have failed. Because some of those managing directors who sat in the chair just wanted to ensure peace in their times. They didn't want trouble. So the business began to die. So you need to nurture that constantly. And in the model, of course, which many of us who talk to our clients, we always tell them that we all have 2 jobs, right? And if you're not willing to do both of them simultaneously, the business cannot run. It's all about managing today and simultaneously creating tomorrow's organization. And that inability to live in these 2 worlds, and somebody may even say we need to have a horizon 3, but let me just focus on 2. If you can't do that, you're running into trouble. The third one, the blind spot number 3, transitioning to professional. As the business grows, I mean, we all know that. First it's father and daughter, but comes a time when you have to bring in more people. And I don't look at the word professional as a qualification. I'm really here saying bringing in more people. But the issue is, before you bring in people, you better get your family ready to know what to do with those people. Because it's not just a question of highly qualified or less qualified. It's not that. But if the family members don't understand the business principles, and when I say family members, I mean including all the members at home who never step into the office. Because there is such a thing as pillow talk. There is such a thing as conversations at home, which impact the business. So unless you prepare the family saying, we are now going to bring in more people, and those people have to be handled differently, the business is bound to fail. Besides that, when you bring in those people, you better bring in people who not only they are good in the technical sense, but who know what it means to operate. And higher they are going to be part of the organization. The tragedy is, it's not the guy from the best business school who can do the job. You need to get the right kind of cultural fit. Otherwise, the disappointment is very high on both fronts. The family is disappointed. And unfortunately, businessmen don't understand that families look at qualifications rather than the cultural fit, both at home as well as, of course, from the outside. The fourth blind spot. Trouble will appear. It will appear. So you better create structures and mechanisms to get ready for that trouble. Because if you don't do that, you're asking for more. And a little more on that a little later. Okay. So running quickly, the fifth one. Wealth that is generated. What happens to that? Invariably, there will be issues. And issues of fair, unfair. And that fairness and unfairness is not a legal thing. It's an issue, emotional issue that will be played out, you know. I did mention this wonderful person in the beginning. I said he is leading a troubled life right now. But those of you who know the story of this famous man, the complete gentleman, you know his story, that he was one of those daring adventurers who flew across the world on a microlight, right? From Europe to India. And if you know his story, then you may know that during his flight, this young lady was an inspiration for him, to the extent that he wrote a book about the journey. And it's called her The Angel in My Cockpit. And if you look carefully at the cockpit, you will see the picture of a small child. And the proud grandfather said, she was the angel who helped me go through, because you're flying a microlight across oceans. But something happened in the family. Years later, to the extent that this young angel, Ananya, who was the eldest child of his eldest son, Madhupati, and her siblings, sued the grandfather. And the grandfather had his own legal documentation to prove that, look, the son had walked out of the family. So that is what I meant by saying fairness or unfairness. You can have legal documentation saying that somebody is estranged, somebody has walked out, somebody has done this, etc., etc., etc. You know, most of us in the press like to talk about the story between the father and Gotham. But what not many people know, that this story goes back further, you know. And even the grandchildren have sued the grandfather. All about the fairness of division of money. So, going further, let's talk about the next blind spot. Values, and this is an interesting one. No, my book is not about ethical values. But you know what? All businesses run on values. Only then can you generate. My book focuses on sustaining the value, which is the capital value of the business. But value is not just money, remember, it's about multiple stuff. So the clash of values here, I'm really talking about the ethical issues that come up intergenerationally, as well as inside the generation. Lots of examples can be given about families, if you work closely with them, you'll realize, particularly in large families, how brothers see things, how brothers and sisters think, how brothers and sisters together have different views. Then they forget the grandchildren, the sibling level, particularly when it becomes a cousins consortium. The way the cousins operate and how does it impact the brand value. There are lots of complications that come up if you don't look at, you can look back and say, maybe we didn't bring up the children right. But it has an impact. And that's a huge blind spot that people have because they have not figured out. And you know what? The other big thing that happens, irrespective of how brilliant a family, an entrepreneur is or a founder or a patriarch is. I said, principles of business, succession planning, a favorite one, because businesses keep pushing this decision back. Because who believes that they are ready to die? Even as simple as writing wills is not done in time. But forget wills. It's also a question about how do you intend to, and succession planning is not a legal issue. There are various steps involved, which the book enumerates. It explains to you at every stage with multiple options that you need to generate. And larger the size of the family, there is bound to be, I call it a dormant gene, sometimes it skips generations. I've had clients where the parents have been quiet because the patriarch was a larger than life case. But the grandchildren who have now come, the third generation who have come into the business, and their siblings, that cousins consortium of the third generation, they will have a lot of questions to ask of their parents and of their grandparents, saying, if this is the way the business. So it will surface sooner or later, and ignoring this reality is asking for trouble. Which is why, like all of us who run organizations, we realize that it's not about a document called succession plan or a document called family constitution. It's not about all that. It's the way the plans are done, And I'm quoting General Eisenhower, who became the president of America, very well known for his phrase that plans are nothing but planning. So the process is more important than the document that you create. And even after a lot of time, and I spent some time in the book talking about the role of constitutions, I can tell you, we have reached stages where the family has come close to the end, and then people have pulled back. And guess what? I always tell them, give them, let there be no post-purchase regret. Give it time, so that there is well thought out decisions. Because in the urgency, or rather the sudden, and the patriarch again, let's not do a farm laws here, rush into it and then walk out with regret because you didn't pay attention to the process. You thought you could actually, and many patriarchs have done it in the past. They pushed through and then they have regretted it. Okay. Well, how about the ninth one? Businesses and families are living organisms. So there are tons of emotions attached to it. Okay. Let's go back to the Ramayana, everybody's favorite book nowadays in India. Family business. Family business, called the kingdom. But emotions get involved. Okay. And those emotions are not just with the people inside. The book talks about the famous model which is used in the world of family business called the three circles. There are multiple stakeholders, and those stakeholders play a part in changing the way businesses run. There was a client who was telling me about what happened in Bangalore with a very famous example of this famous entrepreneur, family businessman, who a couple of years ago, not too far back, just over nearly 3 years ago, decided to end his life because he couldn't handle certain things that are happening in his business. And that was happening not just because of the family pressures, because it was happening from the outside, because of other stakeholders involved in the business. So it's not just those guys in the business, but they impact the business. So you better be ready to operate and understand the emotional sides of it. Well, as consultants, we believe we offer value, but how many of us are able to convince the client that we can genuinely offer ideas to them? And why is it that when it's so simple for us, it doesn't seem to be so simple for them? That despite one or two people in the business saying, look, we believe we need you guys, they still don't sign up and become our clients. And it's a sad part, because we often remind themselves that, this kind of conversation that you have only with your people, and it's not unnatural, particularly in the first generation. First generation businessmen are often bootstrapped. They think they have all the answers. Families mistrust outsiders. And they're not convinced that outsiders can offer great value. And they're very worried about the price of outsiders, of course. I can tell you there are so many clients who come to you and say, look, I don't want to, I know I need you guys, but I don't want to pay. My family doesn't agree. And then when you talk to people from around the world, they'll tell you that why is it that Indian families are so worried about, you keep telling us that, Indian families are interested in generational, sustaining the business. Then why don't they understand that investing in good advice is amongst the best investment that the family can make? I call it self-medication, We refuse to go and get good advice and invest in that good advice by not seeking external assistance. Structures, and these structures, as I said, could take a long while to make. And I'm not referring to business systems alone. Even when families decide to create family boards, family councils, work with others, the investment that is involved in creating this, it's not and I've had lots of clients who've said, help me make an organization chart, and I've invested in systems. It doesn't work that way. And even that may need to get reconfigured, because that's not forever, because emotions are involved, because other members of the family get added. We had this recent case of a person who was telling me, this is the way my family is run. And then he said, my son is about to get married. And he says, I don't think there will be any problem at all, because she's running her business also separately. This new lady who's joining the household. I said, yes, she is joining the household. What about her business, and how will it impact your business? And how will it impact all of you? Don't you think that now that you're discussing, you need to keep this in mind, that there is a new variable to the entire system, which could mean you need to change certain things in the organization. And unfortunately, many families who have operated by a mindset that the female doesn't matter are now running into trouble with their daughter-in-laws, their wives, who have been silent partners on boards to meet corporate norms. And also, of course, I have a chapter called Lifting the Veil, the role of the daughter. And I've had some wonderful examples of clients where the daughter-in-laws are not the right people to run the business, if only they saw it. And the good news is some of them are actually appreciating it. So I showed you the Nika story. Well, I'm not deep into the family, but I would love to know whether that family involves others who are not from the same bloodline. That would be interesting. And that's going to be a factor sooner or later. Yeah, we're coming to the last few points, and the blind spot number 12 is a lot of the unvoiced questions. Unvoiced because nobody wants to talk about it. But if it's not discussed between brothers, between family members, it is not, because it's not discussed openly, doesn't mean these questions do not exist. Including the reluctant family member who's pulled into the business with absolutely no heart in it. Including asking this question saying, guys, dukaan band kare kya? Who says we need to continue the business? Which is why my final one, the baker's dozen complete, asking the question, is business forever? Not only because purposes vary, environments have changed. It's just because business is not for everybody. And we are still stunned when a businessman sells out. Last week, there was this big story, right? A large family business in Delhi decided to sell a substantial stake to a Japanese company. Everybody is asking, why have they done it? Well, we need to know more. Maybe it's a form of giving them growth. I don't know. You got to figure this out. But all I can tell you is I believe that I tell some families sometimes, don't be stuck with it. The sunk cost fallacy, अब क्या करें इसमें आ गए हैं. Businesses need not be a one-way street. But who's going to ask that question? Those questions are often not asked. Does it need to be, Now, as external advisors, we can sit and ask these questions, provided we play the true and trusted advisor's role. And I know and you know that not all consultants can do that. Because for us also, it's a business that we are running, in which case we don't play the role of the trusted advisor. We are truly not doing our part. And sadly, over the years, I've seen too many cases where consultants, there is a difference between being a consultant and being a trusted advisor. And we need to be ready to do that, Last few thoughts before we open up for questions. There is the reality of decision making. When we sit down and advise clients, we often tell them, make the right decision, even if it's a little bit of a pain, including asking yourself the mortality question, saying, what happens if you pack up tomorrow, Shubh shubh bolo, aisa nahi baat karna chahiye. Now, I'm not saying you have to ask these questions as bluntly as I'm posing it to you, but various scenarios need to be examined. Otherwise, you don't have multi-generational value creation. And I think it's terrible. If a family closes its business, you have worked so hard to generate the value. Not only you, many families depend on you. Many customers depend on you. Many suppliers depend on you. Why should it be held hostage to the whims and fancies of a couple of family members? Because when a business does very well, let's go back to why we all have studied, if someone has made a courageous decision. That courageous decision started with the entrepreneur saying, I believe I can do a business. I want to be in the world of businessmen. Those two youngsters, 19-year-old boys, one of them, of course, created his first app when he was, I think, 15 or 17, I think. And these youngsters, so I love that spirit. And then the courageous decision saying, start karte hain kuch. But then once you start it, you better realize then their advisors need not just be family members, but they are there. They are with you. They support you. They help you at every stage. That's how all businesses start. The garage story. But it doesn't have to end there. So those are the blind spots. And I thought I will talk to you about the converse. If you need to know more about it, Chandan, since you said you were flashing the book and said, I thought, let me also do my little bit of a pitch for people who want to read more about all these stories. If they go to my publisher's website and enter the coupon code called IMCI Special, they can get a 25% discount. Okay, that's for those people who want to take away their blind spots and actually get into business. But thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts with you guys.
I guess those who bought the books, your book from Amazon, have missed out on this.
I was expecting.
To get it.
Meeta ji,
we were very fast and enthusiastic.
Meeta ji, आपको मैं एक और मेरे तरफ से देने वाला हूँ 100% discount.
Thank you.
To me also.
Because you're a student of family business. Sorry, Shrikant?
Yeah, to me also, then I get 50% discount. One I bought and one you will give.
Definitely, definitely. And you're welcome to share it with any of your clients, okay?
Sure.
Because
sure.
you can certainly do that. But on a serious note, I thought I'll focus on the blind spots because I thought we have a few more people who have signed in now. I thought we could have a discussion around these ideas and
Sure,
get
Jay,
the
and in
valuable
fact,
experience of various people.
yeah,
Thank you.
sure, Jay. In fact, thank you for this special offer for IMCI and people around in this session with us. So that's one. Number two is, anyway, I also, apart from the book I can also flash this list of questions after going through the book that I already have for you. Obviously, we have to time it, and I already see a few questions in the chat box. So what I'll do is maybe I'll start shooting these questions. We'll just try to, I mean, obviously in the interest of time, and since there's a lot that you can speak about, and for which I think book will delve much deeper into it, but we'll have to maybe try and keep it as brief as possible. So I'll start with the following. Maybe let's take this as a rapid fire sort of a round, and then we'll get into the detailed question. Number one, what inspired you to write this book finally?
Okay. I said in the beginning, and like I said, I'm fascinated by the story of business. I love stories. Okay. And to me, the best story is always the story of businessmen. How did a business start? Every time I sit with any client, new, old, I always want to get into their mind and ask them, how did this start? In fact, I ask my consulting friends also, why did you choose to be a consultant? They ask me and I tell them my story. But I'm fascinated by this story because it's to me, and like I said, I have a lot of respect for the fact that, I tell people, when you are an entrepreneur, you work 25 hours a day. And they look at me and say, 25 hours कैसे यार, 24 घंटे ही होते हैं. और मैं कहता हूं उनको, भैया तुम सपनों में भी बिजनेस के बारे में सोचते हो. Even in your sleep, particularly in the early years. When you have started building something, you start hiring, you've got payroll to meet, you have to win new customers, till you reach a stage where things have changed. But the cycle of the butterfly, which I said, the butterfly is very vulnerable when it's at the egg stage. It's very, very vulnerable.
Sorry.
When you work for a company, I know they all talk about burnt out, I work very hard, etc. And I'm not denying the fact that they work extremely hard and they have issues of stress and challenges of various kinds. But it's a different thing to be an entrepreneur. Completely different. And I'm sure a bunch of us sitting here in this group will agree, because all of us are entrepreneurs of some form or the other, And I started my entrepreneurial journey over 30 years ago, and I always realized that, look, my respect for other people who run I don't care if he's running a small pawn shop, a chai wala. I have a lot of respect for people who run businesses because they are trying to, and their reasons why they've started it could vary. I've had clients who have said, they're second generation, third generation guys who have said, no, I don't want to, they want to opt. But once they've got into it, then they have taken, and they've taken the business to a next level.
Right.
It's a fascinating story. All businessmen are fascinating.
So, okay, as I said, a few rapid fires to you. So, the second one is, do you think the family businesses are more specific to a particular region than in general? Because let's say in India, I think Calcutta or Kolkata was one of the base, I think, for most of these, which eventually became big, and maybe most of them shifted as well, but the origin was there. So from that point of view, do you see a specific region producing more family businesses?
Let's call it communities more than regions. Okay. And there is a reason why it was Calcutta, right? Okay. There are not that businessmen have not existed in other parts of India. But if you talk of today's India and you look at certain communities who have been thriving as business people, a large number of them have come from from Marwar. We call them the Marwari businessmen from Rajasthan. But they are not the only ones. I mean, many of them for various economic, social and economic particularly reasons have moved out of the harsh environment that they were, living in. And in India, willy-nilly, the social structures have created a class of people who are involved in commerce. And when they started moving out, they were funding kingdoms and kings for very long times. But when the British Empire started, Calcutta was the headquarters. So naturally, that being the center of gravity, businessmen moved there. But they have not left there. They've been all across the country. In fact, it's the fascinating book there are many good books on the Marwari business community. But it's not only Marwadis. The immigrant works harder in life. So whether it's the immigrant who goes to the Western Protestants who moved to America, or the immigrant communities who migrated to India, the Sindhi community. But it's not just that. And the good news about India is India's social structures are changing. So today you have a whole new class of businessmen who are coming from the knowledge sector. But interestingly enough, if you look at the profile of a number of these guys who have started new businesses, they still are having the roots in the traditional social structure of India. But it will change. These are factors of time. And it's not only India, it's across the globe. This is the story across the globe. So there is a factor, social factor more than anything else. To me, the big community that is emerging is women entrepreneurs. We don't call it a community, but if I were to call it a women as a community, once again, because access has been provided.
So I'll come back to the book now, because book actually talks about it throws a very important data when it says that family businesses around the globe contributes anywhere between 30 to 90% in the national GDP of respective countries. Yeah. I'll also tell you the India statistics, which is staggering. I mean, we do not realize, but let's say this was 2015. Obviously, the new shift could be slightly here or there, but I don't see a drastic shift. It talks about in India, we have about 108 firms or family businesses which are publicly listed, and it is counting maybe. And if we consider both organized or let's say so-called unorganized as well, the contribution of family businesses towards our GDP is about 66%. And more importantly, also in the same phase, almost about 80% are employed, or 80% of the workforce is employed by a family business. So if we see that, we do not realize, but family businesses are really contributing, and this is not now, it has been going since ages, a global phenomenon, but in India it is, I think, staggering. Now, I know you eventually, as you moved to other chapters, you're speaking about more structure, corporate governance, etc. But I have a question just before that. Do you think family businesses have got their dues in India with the contribution that they have made?
No, I said it in the beginning, no. I think they do. Time to time, the politicians of the nation like to say that, in fact, as recent as, I think less than a year ago, our Prime Minister did stand up and say, look, we must respect money and capital and people, private sector, etc., etc. But that's, politicians change the tune according to which way the election winds are flowing. So they are the whipping boys when things don't work. But the truth is, if they were only to understand that when you look at the statistics that you just not shared with us, everybody can't be employed by the government. And it's private sector that will actually, private enterprise, don't call it private sector, private enterprise that will really help. Because, even in the private sector in India, many of them are funded by very large financial institutions. Okay, so and that money is public money. So, but private enterprise in the sense that they are the families who are running it, they control, as I mentioned in the book, they control the destiny of the business. And right. Yeah, we need to do that. And more than ever, I think it's necessary.
Sure. I mean, just a connected question as we move ahead in the chapter. What I have done is there's a sequence of chapter-wise questions that I've put in as well. So just a connected question, because since we speak about stakeholding, family being the critical one, someone who started and taken the journey ahead, to maybe for families which also managed to borrow public money as well. In general, there are three circles that you refer to, and this was with reference to John Davis and their part, where it talks about three circle, which is ownership, family, and business generally. So when we look at a particular business, one of it is the ownership part of it, who owns the business. The second is, let's say, the business part of it, and third is the family part of it. Around this, would you give us some slightly more insights around how these are intertwined? Because obviously the book talks about this in greater detail, but maybe a minute or two will be nice.
So I did mention there are multiple stakeholders. To explain each of those elements is going to take a long time, because that will need a separate session by itself.
Yes.
But certainly the point I mentioned earlier is that it's no longer about just the family. You may have seen recently a case in India of a large firm that is in the, shall I say, television space, getting its arms twisted by a large pension fund and investors group. So to you and me, they're a family business, right? But at the same time, there is a large bunch of people who are now saying, look, our voice also matters, And I think that's the reality of every business, particularly when it grows in size. And many family businesses after, in India, many private families, I'm taking you back to the early 80s. The name of Swaraj Paul has been forgotten, I guess, by most of us, or rather today youngsters don't even know that. But there was a time when Swaraj Paul was considered a raider, because he came into India and wanted to buy out certain businesses.
Yes.
Okay, and that's when many private families realized, my God, our personal stake is very little. Including in Tata's, they woke up and said, my God, our stake is very little. Because Swaraj Paul, the most famous of those raids was against escorts. Yeah, and that was not the only one he did. So then they all ran to the government. Though I said, private businesses have no one to help them. But our politicians in our private sectors have been hand in glove for various things. They all got together and said, here's a raider at the gate, So those elements are equally important today, because very few businesses are really 100% owned by the family. In fact, if you want scale, you will seek money from outside, whether it's in the form of dilution of your stake or debt. It will happen. It has to happen. Nobody has unlimited money.
And this is where maybe the point of corporate governance and how you run it also comes in the picture. Again, you've mentioned this also in the book.
Yeah.
Well.
To me, the reason is the governance practices is not just is really for the business. Even if I'm running a small business, small shop, I've had clients, guys who are in Lamington Road. No question, he's putting his money, he's borrowing money, so he's a trader, but it's family business. Because it happened in multiple generations. He wants to grow. He's going to die. What happens in business after it? I beg your pardon.
I want to chip in here.
Please.
If you have some time, Chandan, if you allow.
Yes, please.
I think it's very interesting, the statistics which you are saying. And classically, there are more than 40 definitions of what is a family business. Understand, or say we assume that where there are two family members connected by birth or by marriage, minimum two family members who own and manage the business is a family business. Now, if you look at it many times, the management business programs. Now, family managed business is a misnomer, because a family cannot manage a business if it does not own it. Like you, me, or say you, your brother and mother and all go and manage somebody's business. That is not the family business. You have to own. So the ownership part is extremely important in the family. And if listed companies also, if we see, then almost 69% of listed top 500 companies also, when I was doing study, largest shareholders were the promoters and their family members. So they are family controlled, professionally managed companies. So the whole concept which we keep on saying, the families are not the small businesses or large businesses. Entrepreneurs like Flipkart, they are not family businesses.
Not
Agree.
yet.
Two
Agree.
partners
Yeah.
and the partners which you spoke about, 19 years old boys, they are not a family business. Not yet.
They're not. I use the word entrepreneurs for them.
Yeah.
But they're not yet. But not yet. But the point is they have if they do things well and they sustain it. I mean, they are very, very young. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
talking about who knows where it will take them.
Yeah. that is-
And one of them, I
And
think you also referred-
I said one of them comes from a
one of
family
them come from a family background.
Yeah.
So
But
thank you,
he's
Meeta. I
not,
think this
he's
was
not in that same family, right? Now, obviously, because they are young, they're very different.
Yeah.
But thank you, Meeta. I think this was extremely useful to set up the perspective. I have a lot of questions, so I'm just trying to. Now, one of the other problem, and as you move ahead in the book, you talk about the scaling up of traditional businesses, which are family run now. Obviously,
I think, sorry to interrupt you, Chandan. I think Sunil dropped off. He had raised a couple of questions in the
we
group.
will come to that. We will come to that.
Okay, yeah.
So
I think he dropped off. Yeah.
So basically, when we talk about traditional family businesses, which are there for a period of time, they have their own culture, they have their own way of running businesses, and some of them overcome the test of times and continue to grow, or some of them stay where they are, or some of them, by the virtue they are there, starts going down in terms of their growth. But you spoke about in your book few businesses which are small by choice, because they want to be small.
Yeah.
Some of them because the style of family management. Here we are talking about ownership as well as management by a family business, which is like that. Number third there could be different challenges, right? Succession is a big challenge in many businesses in our country. Even the smaller businesses, which are so-called, we could categorize it as family business, but most of the kids do not want to continue their business. And some of the people you speak about, they've done exceedingly well, but they don't have a choice because the succession just can't happen now, at least from their family point of view. And of course, I mean, you also need to upgrade your skill time to time, etc. So you spoke about this side. And from a scaling point of view for traditional businesses, at least with respect to the current times, which are some of the things, of course, all of these are, but that you think is extremely critical for them to at least start moving the pivot now?
For the family to scale up, like I
That's
said,
correct.
I think is first of all, they need to understand that it cannot be done by only the family members. They have to bring in more talent of a different kind. And my point was that they must first prepare the family to understand that you need to be, that we need to start operating differently. And even in fact, segregating certain things which are only family stuff and certain things which are purely business. Because when the business is small, it's like this. But then slowly you need to separate it. Otherwise, you are asking for more and more trouble. And even in the separation process, if you don't do it correctly, then things are bound to go wrong. So various steps will have to be done, have to be taken to ensure that it's done correctly. If you did, so I said in the beginning about the person, they're due to do it by design, your vision. If you have that intention, then you better start working on it from day one. Otherwise, if you try to, if business and family are so closely connected, and they continue to be connected, it's not going to get totally disconnected. But in the initial part of life, it's like Siamese twins. If you're going to remove them, then you better do it, like any separation of conjoined twins. You need to do it very delicately. Good surgery would be required. Yeah.
Very well put. Very excellent point.
Otherwise, you're going to ask for trouble. And you would have seen, I'm sure, Meeta, in your experience, you would have met a lot of businesses that have attempted to scale and have failed.
That's true. Yeah, initially they start as Siamese twins, and then at some point you have to develop very clear-cut guidelines and the rules. Most important is the hat that you are wearing. Are you wearing the hat of the professional? You have to wear both, but at what point, which hat is important? Yes.
So do you desire to build a business like that is the question. Because if you don't desire it, Keep it
Yes.
small. I mean, there's no harm. Who says you need to grow? You know, you can be happy then. I've worked
Yeah.
with people who are very clear. This is then it's a lifestyle business. You know.
Yeah. We call them as lifestyle money making machines. So they're making money for you. So you are happy about it. They're not the legacy builders. They are.
Correct. They are not interested, and
money.
they're very clear. You know, and Chandan, the other point was, you know, the youngsters might want to venture out, but one day they get dragged back into it. You know, there were lots of cases, including very large corporations, where they have such the son, particularly the son, says, "No, I want to be somewhere else," and then willy-nilly after, you know, you'll be surprised how many of them come back.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I
No,
don't
and
want to
some
take.
of them do it by design. Anyway, I just looking at
I
the
don't
clock,
want
so-
to take Rahul Gandhi's name here in any case, where it's a contrary view there.
Though
But
Chandan, I've said in the book, the biggest family business in the world is politics.
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
That's why I said, I mean, you talk about
The
people.
biggest family business in India is Gandhi family.
And in the world, family business,
Yeah.
one of the forms is politics is family business.
Yeah, because
same
power with
principles
power,
apply.
I think it gives a different dimension finally. So I will move on because you also spoke about, and it's something that you have touched upon. But again, within the family constitution is extremely important as we go on now, and in following chapters you also spoke about it. I just have two examples here and two beautiful stories. I think one is a story of D-Mart, the Avenue supermarket. Now you traditionally, when you think about it, you will say, oh, this will be a family owned plus managed business when you think about it. But when you actually see, I know few people who are very close to Mr. Damani, and to Mr. Norona, he was very clear that I give you 3 years and I will not interfere in whatever you do. And he didn't. So, I mean, when we talk about this to the other paradigm, someone who was the pioneer, because since we are talking about retail, let's stick to that, Mr. Kishore Biani with his Future Group. This was a completely different element altogether. While he pioneered, but I think he got a lot of his family members, I mean, extended families and people to some of the core positions in the business, which I think to me, whatever I have read and understood, I think which completely screwed up the whole growth of the business, because professionalism somehow just was off the window. So within the family constitution, you spoke about corporate board and family board. These are the two different layers that you spoke about. Maybe a quick line around this, if you can just clarify what
I think it all boils down to what the family wants to do in terms of growth. I mean, both these individuals that you mentioned, they've got different styles, they've got different interests. And one may even wonder why. I mean, initially market used to wonder why did Mr. Damani, who was a known established stockbroker, decide to go into, it's like, you know, into retail. And it's like the market is now wondering why is Mr. Rakesh J looking at flying
airline.
he was flying high somewhere else. Why is he getting into the airline business? But people have their own desires and they have their money to, but the way they have gone about it, and I think it's very unfair to comment on a business that is still in being conceived of, you know, it's getting ready. But I guess he's also hired professionals to do it. So the choice can vary. But when you create the businesses, then you want to operate in certain ways, particularly when you're operating with your own family members. If you don't bring in governance practices, then everybody who walks in and through the door, including the third or fourth generation youngsters who walk in, when they walk in through the front door, perhaps the professionals walk out of the back door, you know, or the side doors, you know, and that has happened in many places.
Correct.
Okay, so
yeah, I think
there is no harm. I mean, the question is how do you mentor and prepare them, and that's what I've mentioned in the book.
I agree.
You need to do that.
No, in the book, it is very fascinating. As I said, I mean, there's a lot that I can ask, but maybe I'll just quickly say some of the things, and I encourage all of you to read the book because it talks about succession challenge today. It is one thing to speak about succession planning, but there are a few challenges that you face. It talks about the new generation and the emerging role of daughters, because the book also talks about the Apollo Hospital group, because the gentleman has 4 daughters and all 4 actively involved in the business, to people like the Parley Agro group, again, with 3 daughters completely managing it, to to even, let's say, I mean, we spoke about Kishore Biyani, but he also got his daughter to play a key part in a business which was more boy dominated or male dominated. So and Shiv Nadar with HCL.
Shiv Nadar, yeah.
Handed the baton to the daughter, and it's a sizable business. So a lot of them. So it's again very fascinating. It talks about in family business, whether it is pure play, naked nepotism, or there is meritocracy, or maybe just so-called meritocracy there, to something when also it delves into the consulting part, the outside help, because in family the dimension completely changes when we talk about consulting help. Because with my experience, I have also seen family businesses relying on babas also as their family guru. And who also advise them on their business to maybe independent. It also, the book speaks about various kind of relationship. It could be an individual counsel, just a facilitator, or an agony uncle or an auntie, or just a mediator or a sounding board. Different ways it can be used. Yes, Meeta, please.
No, I just say, Jay, maybe you can share one or two examples of you being a facilitator with the families. What are the challenges that you face?
That's a good one, yes.
A number of those, as you mentioned, including when other members of the family don't like the fact that you speak truth to power, because that's important, you know, that you give your views because you believe that that's the right thing to do in that situation. So like I said, when you are a trusted advisor, you share a lot of stuff, in confidence with the family. But if the family at the end of the day still wants to take steps which go against your professional ethic, then you don't want to continue to play that role in that place, right? And that is important, because there are certain things which are bound to create trouble in the long run. And also, of course, family members, as I mentioned in the book, also sometimes change their mind about you retaining you for a long time, because their circumstances may have changed. Okay, so it works both ways. And I think as independent consultants, it's not a one-way street for us. Interesting, and I'm sure, Meeta, you would have seen this also, is to convince a lot of Indian family businesses have changed their character over the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years, over the last decade. Particularly many family businesses, particularly the MSME units which are aspiring to become big and go public, etc., is getting into the right, forget governance practices, even professional practices. And I'm really talking in terms of accounting correctly. I've had a lot of clients even in certain retail businesses as well as certain industries where the color of money is an important element. You don't expect, then you must tell them this business cannot grow. Then don't harbor those dreams about becoming a large company. If you harbor those dreams, and I have advised firms very clearly saying, I'm not expecting them to change their practice tomorrow, but you could see down the road that India cannot continue to operate in the way, you're talking of becoming a 5 trillion economy. And one day we will become that. If you want to be that, you better have pillars which are strong, not hollow. If these businessmen who all want India to become big do not follow the right practices, they're creating hollow pillars. So the foundation is not strong. The superstructure is bound to fall. So helping the company to do that, yes, that's not an easy assignment.
So, okay, one last question, and maybe then I'll request Shrikant to propose the vote of thanks. But before that, because again, it's very fascinating, and time is a challenge. We can just go on and on, I'm sure. But there's the book. Please go ahead. It's there on Amazon, and plus Jay, being generous, also is offering a 25% to all of us. So that's nice. One last question, and I'll take it actually from Sunil. I know he's not there, but I hope he listens to the recording of this. He spoke about the entrepreneurship part, and one of the key challenges, the risk management. Now, I come from risk management, so it's something very, very close to me in any case. But if you can just share your views or insights, and then maybe that's the last question.
So what is the specific question, please?
So the specific question is, one of the challenge of entrepreneurship is risk management.
Yeah.
And he just wanted your views or comments on this.
No, so any businessman looks and is constantly analyzing his risks, and risk is not a financial risk alone. I mean, we just now spoke about the fact that if you don't change your practices, your business is going to be in trouble. Okay,
Yeah.
and that business is, because the legal systems in the country are changing. That's one. Succession challenges. Okay, if you do not prepare for succession, then let's be clear that this business cannot carry on for another generation. Market competition. If market is changing because of technology reasons, if you are not preparing for that, that's amongst the biggest risks that businesses have today, isn't it?
Exactly.
The last year, for example, those companies who had not invested in technology all had to shut shop. Or if they didn't shut shop, they were in deep trouble, because those companies who have invested in technology practices found some way of surviving.
Yeah, they've become a competitive advantage for some of the companies who managed to actually.
Correct.
So yes, Jay, thank you very much. We just wish to hear you, and also along with that, Meeta, speak about some of the experiences. But I think book looks very, very fascinating, because I managed to not completely go through it, but a fair part of it to tell you that this is extremely fascinating. So thank you for this, Jay. Shrikant, I will request you to share your gratitude and thanks, Jay, on this.
You have already done it, Sanjay, Chandan. You have thanked him 3 times. But anyway, formally, I will thank you, Jay, for your in-depth analysis of how the family businesses work. And, majority of brick and mortar businesses anywhere are generally family started or family businesses even now. There are 3 factors which need to be looked at. One is the ego. When the businessman starts, he starts with some objective or some ambition. When he grows, his ego also grows, and he thinks that he is the best man who knows. When the second generation comes, there is a clash of egos. And another thing is some of the second generation people have lack of respect for the experience of the person who started. That is where the conflict starts. Third thing is the greed, either of the first generation or the second generation. Many of the businesses have prospered, and then they have gone into unrelated fields and sunk a lot of money there. And then the whole edifice falls. We have seen umpteen examples of that. About the culture, whether he is the Sethji, that means the owner, or even if you have a professional as a chairman or a managing director, I think the cultural environment is similar. If boss says so, most of the people will say so, whether it is family business or whether it is a professional business. The only thing is the professional business is such that the chairman doesn't own the money. He works for someone else, and his performance is gauged by the people who own the money. Here, the impact is direct. If the family doesn't do well, they lose the money. And lastly, I would say there is always a dichotomy between experience of seniors and knowledge of juniors. That has to be merged together so that the business gets advantage of both.
Yeah.
And both are important. So these are some of the points I thought I would mention.
Thank you.
And thanks a lot, Jay, for a wonderful in-depth analysis of family businesses. I have gone through 2 chapters, so I know the 3-circle thing and the butterfly thing. The rest I will read, and
Sure.
I'm sure I'll enjoy it. And thanks very much again. And thanks, Chandan, for arranging this wonderful lecture.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, wonderfully.
May I just add, I saw comments and Mr. Srinivasan has just left his, I think, and some of those points are very relevant. I would have loved to respond to them, but we'll keep it. But Meeta, thank you so much for being here. First of all, because you're a major shall I say, a student, because we all like to look at ourselves as
Yeah, we
students
are.
rather than consultants.
Yeah, student
Because it's a
practitioners.
continuing. We are student practitioners.
I
So,
tell my
and
clients
I know
that
you're
you pay me fees and I'm learning from you.
no, and your firm is doing a lot of wonderful work in this field. So, and your book is also a very wonderful, message to people. And I love the way that you guys have written it. So the 5G is a very easy way of, catchy way of, sending the message home. So thank you for sharing your experience. And I'd love to look for to meet you, and we can discuss this when Anuj and others decide to hold a national conference,
National
and do
It's
that. So.
time that we have
And
it now.
yeah, Srikanth and Chandan, I guess we are meeting very soon. So thank you so much for the
Are you
opportunity
holding
of sharing
physical
your thoughts.
meetings in Pune chapter? Are you holding physical meetings now?
Finally, tomorrow, we are just catching up.
Okay. Yeah.
Tomorrow.
We intend to do that so that we can, start meeting each other with appropriate
Thank you.
social
Thank you.
distancing. Yeah.
You're
Thank you.
welcome as well. If you want to join us.
If you want to join, you are
please
welcome.
do join.
Then we can have a
Sure.
very detailed discussion on family business.
I'm not able to join Mumbai meetings, so coming to Pune, I think should think about it. Yeah, long
I
distance
mean,
is better.
this could be different.
Yeah, could be different. Yes.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, folks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
everyone.
See
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye. Good night. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Chandan. See you tomorrow.
Bye, Shrikant. Yeah. Bye, Jay.
I'll call you and tell you whether you should pick me up or not. Okay.
Done,
Thanks.
done. Suresh sir is there. I just wonder if you can, Suresh sir, you're there. Can you just unmute and maybe we want to see
You
you?
stopped recording, I hope.
Oh yes, let me do that. Sorry, I almost forgot.